Hey guys, it's Crazy Boy Aaron here, and as I promised, I'm going to be reviewing the Babysitters Club Netflix show that came out like pretty much just now. I mean, not just now, yesterday, but like about a week ago. So I'm going to be taking a look at it. But before I actually dive into the show, I wanted to address that yes, I do realize that there was 2 other adaptations before of the Babysitters Club. There was a TV show that ran for 13 episodes in 1990, I think, and there was also a film adaptation released in 1995. I haven't watched any of that. I haven't seen those, so keep in mind as this is like my kind of first introduction to anything like film related or TV show related of the Babysitters Club. I have no plans as of right now to watch the old show or the old movie. I am just going to be watching the Netflix show for now. So the thing you must know about this show is that it is supposed to be a modern take on the Babysitters Club. So it's it's modern time, and it's got modern phones like iPhones and stuff like that. So yeah, I going into it, I was a bit kind of like, oh well, modern takes of stuff like sometimes they don't really work out. They can be a bit cringy with them constantly trying to be hip with the kids nowadays, and it often comes along as cringy. But for this show, I actually never found it to have a problem like that. It was always it felt natural. Yeah, there's a few moments where it's kind of cringy with trying to fit with modern times. An example of this is Christy's older brothers, Sam and Charlie. I don't honestly like them in this show. They seem like what society thinks average teenagers are like. They're constantly playing video games and stuff like that. And yeah, so that was kind of silly. It's not luckily Sam and Charlie are not shown very often, but when they are, it's pretty cringeworthy and it's pretty bad. Enough about that rambling. I'm going to be talking about I'm going to go through the episodes and say what I thought about them. And then at the end, I'm going to give you my final thoughts on the show. So the first episode is, of course, based on Christy's Great Idea, the first book, and as you might expect. And one thing I want to note right off the bat is that this show is very similar to the books, and I know that's obvious to say considering it's an adaptation, but my point is that a lot of adaptations tend to change a lot of things from the source about the source material, but this show really followed it I don't want to say note for note, because it's not note for note, but it's pretty damn similar to the books. It's in terms of story, the story is exactly the same. The characters they're a bit changed, mainly for modern purposes of modernizing the show. You got the usual minor changes you would come to expect from adaptations. For example, the character of Dawn is black instead of white in the books, and that's pretty cool because you don't want it to be exactly note for note like the books. The whole point of an adaptation is to give you to give a new take on the source material, so you don't want it to be note for note. I really enjoyed the first episode, and I have to say that just like the books, Marianne is easily my favorite character because she's the one I relate to the most. And the other characters are just how they are in the books, personality-wise. Overall, the first episode is a great introduction to the series. It's a pretty good first episode. I mean, yeah, it's kind of jarring considering this is the Babysitters Club but in the modern world, but once you can get past that, it's pretty decent. Now, episode 2 was based on one of the books that I haven't read yet because it's not a graphic novel. It is Claudia and the Phantom Phone Calls, and it's the first Claudia episode, and we get a look at her life and her family, which is like her family in the books. Get used to that, because I'm going to be saying that a lot. It's like the books. But yeah, this episode was overall pretty decent. It's about, like the title suggests, it's the Phantom Caller, a scary myth about someone who calls you from inside your house. So yeah, overall the episode is pretty good, but I thought it could have gone more in depth about that myth. Like, it doesn't go too deep into it. It just kind of like, they're just kind of scared of it. Like, Christy gets like a few phone calls, and it turns out it's just her friends, and yeah, but they really don't do anything with it. The third episode is based on the truth about Stacy, and we, of course, just like the book, get a look at her life, and we delve a little bit into her past, and we find out she has diabetes, and she comes to terms with it. In this episode, she's more comfortable with it, and she confesses to everyone. And there's a little bit of controversy involving her, like, should we trust her around the kids, like, but turns out, yeah, she is trustworthy, because obviously she can take care of the kids while she manages her diabetes. And you do feel bad for Stacy, because this video starts going around that was sent around by the rival babysitting club, just like the books, and it shows a video of Stacy having an attack due to her diabetes, and that's when she has to basically confess to everyone. And yeah, so it's a pretty interesting episode. The fourth episode is based on Marianne Saves the Day, which is my favorite book in the series, and just like Marianne Saves the Day being my favorite book, it's also my favorite episode so far. Yeah, just because I love the character of Marianne. I think, you know, she's relatable to me, and she probably has the best arc throughout the whole season. She goes from being a fairly shy person to having a lot more confidence at the end of the season, and that was really good to see. Scene of her in the hospital when she's taking care of the kid, and she, you know, like the book, rushes to the hospital to help her because no one else is available. And when she's talking to the nurses, and they assume she's a boy, and it's because they're reading her chart, and then she just basically puts them on blast and starts, you know, like, just criticizing them, and basically tells them to get their shit together. So yeah, that was a really good character moment for her, and the conversation she has with her dad in the car after that is really great. Episode 5 is based on Dawn and the Impossible 3, and is pretty much exactly like the book, except it actually leaves out the parts with Mallory, because she isn't introduced until episode 7. And I thought that was for the better, and to me, it actually makes it better than the book, because my main problem with the book was that the stuff with Mallory, it's kind of unfair how they treat her, and it's, you know, you guys know that I didn't like that stuff if you saw my review of the book, but I think the episode is actually an improvement since it leaves that stuff out. Episode 6 is Claudia and Mean Janine, and is pretty much exactly, almost note for note, like the book, with like a few changes, like because of other episodes leading up to this, but it's pretty much exactly like the book. But to me, the book is a little bit better because it does flesh out the relationship between Claudia and her sister Janine a little bit more. They just get more time together in the book than they do in this episode. So that's the only thing I had a problem with in this episode, but overall the rest of it is really well acted. Episode 7 is based on Boy Crazy Stacy, which, for those of you who've seen my review, you know that I thought that it was my least favorite book so far, least favorite graphic novel in the series so far, and it's the same here, because this is also my least favorite episode. Again, just because, you know it's going to be like the book, and that's what I was worried about going into this episode. And yeah, I wasn't disappointed, because I kind of had a feeling this would happen. Stacy is still unlikable in this episode. She's not as bad as she was in the book, so just because of that, I can say that this is an improvement upon the book, but it's not by much because it's still the worst episode in my opinion, and it still paints Stacy to be pretty unlikable. Episode 8 is Christy's Big Day, where Watson and her mom, Elizabeth, get married. And yeah, it's actually, this episode is one of the only, I think it's one of the only ones that's different from the book. It's similar, like, plot-wise, obviously, because they still get married, but they cut out a lot of the stuff that was in the beginning of the book, and they kind of just cut straight to the chase, to the wedding. And to me, that was really interesting. It goes in a different direction. It even has Christy having her first period during the wedding, so that was interesting. They take it in a different direction, and that's something I appreciated because at least one episode was different from the books, so that's something that was cool. I think I like both versions of Christy's Big Day equally. Episode 9 and 10, the last episodes of the season, is a two-parter called Hello Camp Moosehead, and it is based on the Babysitter's Summer Vacation Super Special book, which I've never read, but... So I was blind going into these episodes, but I ended up really enjoying them. There's a lot going on in these two episodes. The girls end up going to this camp where the counselors are kind of not very fair to the less fortunate kids who can't afford to do certain things that the Babysitters Club are able to do. So Dawn and Claudia actually stand up for those kids and protest against the camp. Meanwhile, we also get Christy trying to, she's her usual bossy self, so she's trying to be a camp counselor, and they aren't keen on that happening. Stacy meets up with Lane, her old friend from New York, and they ended up being friends again. Marianne is also trying to do a musical with the other kids from camp. So yeah, like I said, there's a lot going on in this episode, but it's really enjoyable. It's very interesting, and it's easily one of the best episodes of the show so far. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed this one. So now that I'm done talking about the individual episodes, it's time for me to give my final thoughts on the overall show. And so I have to say that this show definitely surprised me. Going into this, I thought this show was going to be more for like kids, but honestly, I think anyone could watch this show and enjoy it. I enjoyed it. And so, yeah, I was definitely surprised. And one thing I was really surprised about was the acting. That's something I haven't brought up yet, but the acting is really good for like kid actors. Because you normally expect kid actors, they're kind of hit and miss, and it was cool to see that all the kid actors do a really good job. There's like background characters that are dull with their acting, but you expect that from supporting cast. But I'm happy that the main cast at least is pretty good acting wise. So would I recommend this show? Definitely. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. And I'd recommend it to any Babysitters Club fan, whether you're a fan of the novels from the 80s and 90s by Anne M. Martin, or if you're a fan of the graphic novels that are being made now, like me. I think either way you can enjoy this show. I'm giving the Babysitters Club Netflix show, so far, just the first season, a 8 out of 10. So those are my thoughts on the show so far, season 1. I don't know if they have plans to do season 2, but it would be cool to see a season 2 because so far I think the show is pretty good. So I will be reviewing season 2 if they ever make one. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what your thoughts, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Let me know what your thoughts on the show are in the comments below. Probably not going to get a lot of comments as usual. But that's what happens when you have a little over 200 subscribers. But yeah, so again, more videos coming. My next video will probably be soon. See you guys in the next video. Have a good night.